Hello, everybody. I'm Nicole Rios, and I've got opinions. Today's show, I have a guest with me, Andrew Tavani. He runs the free daily newsletter, Page One. He is the host of Getting Caught Up podcast and is a veteran of the digital media space. He led newsrooms at AccuWeather, AOL.com, and others. Before getting into digital news, he worked in television as a game show writer and won a Daytime Emmy as a member of the Cash Cab writing staff. So, Andrew, thanks for being with me today. That's exciting.
Well, thanks for having me, Nicole. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to meet you. I know we've talked a little by email and where we met over at in the two-way morning meeting, but thanks for having me. Much
Yeah, for
appreciated.
sure. So, are you really good at trivia? Did you take a lot away from Cash Cab?
Yeah, at one point I was very good at it. I'm not as good now, but if I throw, if I end up seeing an episode of Jeopardy, I can hold my own, you know.
Okay. Okay. Listen,
Yeah.
I always am like keeping my options open for like group trivia team, so in my back
So
pocket.
so if you need a ringer, I probably would be okay for you there.
So tell me about your newsletter.
Yeah, so the newsletter, it's a free daily newsletter, sends at the end of the day Eastern time, roughly about 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And it really is just there to, it's sort of a news aggregation newsletter. So it's there to update subscribers on all the news of the day, try to, not just all the hard news, some kind of buzzy pop culture type stuff, some servicey type stuff. So you just, get a little bit of everything. So you can kind of like doom scroll less on social media and, you know, live
Have
your
an end of
life.
the day wrap up.
Exactly. Sort of like almost think of it as like the evening news in your inbox instead of on your television because no one watches it on
Yeah.
TV anymore.
Who's got cable? We're all
Yeah.
watching our next streaming show, right? Which
Right.
I think is so funny. Haven't we just come all the way back around on that circle? It's like now we just pay individually for channels instead of cable who pays individually for the channels.
Somebody's got to figure it out and it will. But it's just shifting so much so quickly,
For
So
sure. Well, and so, I think that one of the interesting things is that with your history in media, you've kind of seen President Trump transition from like entertainment figure and being on TV and just like the loud, boisterous personality that he is, and kind of really take some of the like teasing he did through the 80s and 90s that he was going to be running for president and actually like turn it into something serious and like real.
yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting to remember and to know about Trump is that we have so much history of his personality, who he is, how he's going to respond in certain situations, how he handles negotiations. I mean, shoot, the guy put out a book, Art of the Deal. I mean, he laid it all out there for us, which I think is interesting because, so I'll tell you a funny story as we set this up is that when after Trump announced the tariffs in Liberation Day, it was right around spring break time. And we had already had a vacation planned, and I was looking for a book to read while on vacation. And I was like, what better time than now? And so I took The Art of the Deal, which was like a great, I was folding the cover over at the pool because I didn't want to be accosted. Early days, early days. And so it was a great insight into how, and I read it specifically because I wanted to understand the psychology behind his negotiation tactics and how when he walks into a deal, what are his intentions, what's important to him, how does he use leverage? And it was an amazing opportunity because some people don't know, but most of that book is written as a diary. It's written as like a how he went through his day. And so it shows you how often he's on the phone, how many times he's wheeling and dealing, some little offshoots about his perspective of somebody's personality. So it helps you figure out how he reads people and what he finds important. So as we're going to go forward, we're going to talk about a couple of topics like healthcare, the Israel and Gaza situation, aggression in Russia increasing, and how Trump might deal with some of those issues. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what makes Trump tick. Do a little psychoanalyzing real quick and talk about what his motivations are, and what are some of his personality traits that play into the way that he negotiates?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you, like you alluded to, Nicole, you can go back and there's this like digital trail now of clips of him on Oprah, on Larry King. Um, I think even on 60 Minutes years ago in the 80s, 80, mid to late 80s, talking about his vision for America. Now, at that point, he really was not. If he was probably just teasing, I think, like you said, about potentially running for president someday. But he was laying out a vision, his vision for America, where he saw America headed, and clearly he was not. It wasn't sitting well with him. What he was seeing from our leaders at that point. Um, so that's all there for you, and you can see it's rooted in, there's some traditionalist American values in there, but I also think it's about America, being the top power in the world, and him wanting to keep that because he knows what that means for America. And so I think he's talked quite extensively about it in various forms over the years. So there's all of that, and then you know, as he approached as he approached really running for president, during the Obama administration, I would say is probably when he really got serious about it. I think he was more alarmed than ever about the direction of the country and thought he had to take action. And yeah, he had some good things going on. Like he was probably had one of the top rated TV shows on NBC with The Apprentice, and could have stuck with that and could have just rode that, and I'm sure it was a much easier gig than president. But there you go. So I think he was. I think part of it is he was he felt like it was probably time for somebody to step in and do something the way he thought it needed to be done. And then I think there's another aspect to him. I don't know if you've read, I'm sure you read his coverage in the media pretty closely, but going way back, I'm talking about almost 10 years ago now, there was a really interesting article in the New York Times, and this was before they had gotten truly anti-Trump in their coverage. And it was an interview with his longtime butler at Mar-a-Lago. And I don't have you seen this one, Nicole?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it's really interesting. You should find it. Your listeners and viewers should go check it out. Anyway, the guy's name was Tony Senecal, and he had been the Mar-a-Lago butler well before Trump even bought the place. Was there, so he was like this sort of unofficial historian, whatever. And in 2009, he tried to retire. He had been working there for decades, and he was getting older. And Trump refused to let him retire. And he said to him, and I think this is really instructive of what's at the heart of Trump's personality, and we'll get to some of it probably with what you want to talk about. But he said to him, Tony, to retire is to expire. And he basically forced him to stay and work there and continue on as more of like a historian. It wasn't so much like a full-time day-to-day as the Mar-a-Lago butler. But I think that's really important. Like Trump, he's 79. And yeah, he's probably got some health issues now and whatnot, what 79-year-old doesn't. People in their 50s do, right?
Mhm.
But um, I think that is one thing that keeps him going. Like, why would he retire? He'd probably die if he did, or
Can't stop, won't
soon
stop.
after.
For sure. Well, and I think that when you take that go personality, right? Of we're plowhousing. And
Yes.
I think that they learned a huge lesson in Trump one about what it takes to get stuff done in Washington, D.C., which they weren't informed the first time around. And
With
now they know what they need to do.
Yeah,
They know who they need around them. They know more about how things function in DC,
sure.
and how to strategically attack that. So I think that's helpful to him now. But he's got the go go go. He's got the trade the trade desire. He wants even deals. He likes
Yes.
looking at the balance of a negotiation and saying, okay, this actually is shaken out for two people. And I think one of the interesting things is that, back to the earliest days of him,
Yeah.
on the campaign trail in the 80s and 90s, he's talking about the same stuff. He's
Yeah.
talking about evening the trade. He's talking about immigration and doing things right. And I've seen enough of Trump not first person meaning in person, but like his own behavior and interactions with people to know that he really cares about other people's opinions. He's really going to be swayed if he gets enough informed um, opinion that allows him to understand the importance of something. And I think that some people claiming that's corruption. I guess I can see how you would think that, but I also think that it's the feedback to the what's happening on the ground. And I want a leader that's actually going to respond to what's happening on the ground. And so I actually kind of value that. I wouldn't consider that corruption. I would consider that, I mean, listen, when something's going wrong at the job, you call the boss, don't you? I just
Yeah.
feel like that's how things work. Um,
Yeah.
but but I also think that, he wants to make the money. He wants everybody to be making money. I think that
Yeah.
that is one of his approaches when it comes to the trade stuff, that it's like, yeah, he wants an even playing field and he wants everybody to get rich. That's pretty much what you can assume from his motivation, right?
Yeah, I think he wants America to be wealthy. I think he wants that to trickle down to a lot of people think it's all about the billionaire class or the 1% class or whatever. But I really think Trump understands working class people way better than a lot of Democrats or so-called working class, historically politicians who appeal to the working class. He really gets it, and I think he wants that for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I think the fact that he has worked hand in hand with the working class, I think that's the difference. The political class, they've always been civil servants, but they've always worked amongst themselves, right? They work for, not with.
Yep.
Whereas a real estate developer works with the contractors, is in there making sure the jobs are being done, is making sure deadlines are being made, is talking to the people on the ground and on a way more regular basis.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is that's the juice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the political class loses touch because they work for, not amongst. And
Yeah.
for is in like quotes,
The
that's loose
Yeah,
for.
the political class has been in DC for decades, in many of them, Schumer, Pelosi, even there's Republicans, Mitch McConnell, right?
Right. Mwah.
They're not doers. Trump was a doer for almost his entire life and then
Right.
came along 10 years ago or
Congress isn't
so.
made for doers. I think that's the other part of this picture, is that
Yeah.
the way that the legislature is structured is literally so that things take time, so that we can't be kind of like half-cocked and chaotic about how we're putting laws into
Yeah.
structure. But I think that there's like some legitimacy to that.
I
I
agree. I
think
think
that
I
what
think it's probably smart, right?
yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
like I've heard this quip about, they wrote the Second Amendment for muskets because by the time that you could load it and get ready to go, like you were over it already, unless
Yeah.
it was like really serious. I'm like, that's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I think the same idea is true in Congress, right? It's like we do want time to be able to debate things. We do want the intention to be able to like go back and forth. And then that I think is one of the reasons why people in Congress are so like, oh, like offended by Trump's nature, because it's just his go, get it done. I don't care what it takes, get it done,
Yeah.
I think that is the jarring, right? Um, so let's go into the healthcare conversation, because
Okay.
when we take his approach of like go fast, break things, and we apply that to the healthcare situation, which has been a long-standing issue. I think right now we're talking specifically about certain repeals to the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, and just the way that like the Maha fold kind of came into play. And I think that really Maha was a huge aspect of helping Trump win. I personally know a
Agreed.
lot of libs that I love that were towards that would have voted Kennedy if he could have actually gotten on the ballot in a lot of the states where they were not allowing him to be on the ballot. And I think that once Kennedy endorsed Trump, that coalition really created a difference for Trump. And I don't think we can overlook that. And so now I know we've got Maha, who like RFKJ is powering through. I mean, he's doing some stuff.
Yeah.
And so like you can tell that Trump has allowed him to go on and do his thing.
Yep.
at the same time, we have people reacting to the fact that um, Trump and Pfizer just make this deal, right? Where uh, the mRNA is going to continue, that they have 3 years of grace period from the tariffs to help start onshoring with an agreement that there's $70 billion of investment going to be made towards manufacturing onshore, dot, 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 all the reasons.
Yep.
People are kind of mad about it. Um,
So,
so I'm
so
curious your take.
I think, with Pfizer particularly, there's a lot of background there, right? And I'm
Mhm.
talking about recent history, going back to the COVID vaccine, probably. There, now look, Trump had Operation Warp Speed. That's actually the vaccines are his not his doing, but he put a lot of juice behind that, right?
Right.
So I think that part of that reaction is in response to what happened. And now what happened? Okay, so they developed those vaccines quickly. Then Trump was out of office, and it was Biden who oversaw the mandates of them
Mandate.
that went through culture, which I think is really what bothered a huge part of American culture, right?
I
I
agree.
don't think anyone had a problem with the vaccines themselves and that they were there, but it was more the coercion that was used to get people to take them or almost really force people to take them.
Right. And the
Um,
censorship,
the
involved
censorship
with the
around it, around
opposite.
discussing the vaccines and their efficacy or lack thereof. Absolutely. It was a dystopian period, right? And so I think part of it is just almost a knee-jerk reaction to Trump dealing with Pfizer because Pfizer, they were sort of the face of that. Moderna to some degree, AstraZeneca also, who Trump announced to deal with on Friday,
Yep.
they had a vaccine that was not as prominent, and the J&J as well. Uh, so Pfizer's kind of the poster boy for the vaccine. And I suspect, I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect there's a fair amount of people out there who just don't have a lot of love for Pfizer right now.
Well, I can understand that. I think
Yeah.
that Pfizer specifically, the main issue is that the vaccines are the mRNA vaccines, right? And the thing that most people don't know is that mRNA has been in the works developmentally for decades now.
Yep.
I mean, this isn't a new technology. It's also not a proven technology. So I think that's some of the trepidation. Um, the problem now is that we've seen it in action in the COVID vaccine, and we've seen all the problems that they knew existed, which is why it hasn't come to market prior.
Yep.
um, and and so now people have a bad taste in their mouth, and they're trying
Yes.
to salvage the 20 years of R&D on a potentially amazing technology. Listen, if mRNA actually worked the way we wanted it to work, they're trying to use it to be able to treat cancer. I mean, they're trying to
Yeah.
obliterate cancer with this technology. So did it mess up in the COVID vaccine? 100%.
Hmm.
Is there a lot invested? And can we, from a practicality point of view, look at Pfizer not wanting to bail on this long-term investment where they're closer? I mean, it's a joke, but like they're closer than they've ever been. And if we can if from a healthcare point of view, if we can use the data that we've gotten from these mRNA COVID vaccines and apply some of these outcomes into what we're trying to do with mRNA as it sits, that could be really beneficial. The problem with this stuff is that you can't get it into a clinical trial with humans because it doesn't work because of
Right.
all the issues we see. And now, kind of what you ended up getting was like a mass mandated clinical trial. So I don't know. I can understand why people are upset with Pfizer. I think what we need to refine the point to is to be upset with the mandates. I don't think that any
Correct.
of us would feel the same way if a huge majority of our population wasn't coerced or forced
Yes.
by fire, by will of work,
Yeah.
basically.
Now, think about the people who were coerced, got the vaccine, and then ended up with problems after the fact. They have every right to be angry, and I get why that anger may extend to this deal, right?
Right.
Having said all that, I do think Trump is probably at least going in the right direction to try to get some of these drug prices under control
Right.
and do something for the nation. Obviously, drug prices are high for people, and healthcare costs in general are high. So anything that can be done to bring it down is, I think, probably comports well with his America First agenda. But
Yeah.
I fully get the the animus toward Pfizer and and all of that. And I think it's going to be hard. It's going to take a long time for Pfizer to get past all of that, and for people in general to get to to let Pfizer off the hook, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that when you bring the conversation towards economy and towards the healthcare situation, it's healthcare is 30% of our GDP. And when you bring Trump back to being this guy who wants people to make money, he I find it hard to believe he's going to let some huge American company like Pfizer fail. This is why they
Yeah.
purchased 10% of Intel. You know, we're doing our best to hold up our American industry and at the same time be like, hey man, I want you to win, but you got to win for America, not for more so than you are right now, right?
Yep.
There was this study done in 2017 that was only done on 20 of the top most popular drugs. And it found that just based on the differences in pricing from American prices to
Yeah.
prices abroad, that because they always claim R&D, right, is why we have to pay more. They still had on these 20 drugs alone a $40 billion profit off of the differences they charge Americans to others on these 20
First.
drugs alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's crazy.
that's plenty. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like that's as far as I'm concerned. So listen, they have room to like figure it out and as far
Sure.
as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
And
and I think what you're referring to too is the most favored nations clause or
well,
whatever
that's
that
exactly what they're trying to
yeah,
implement,
so
right?
now we're Americans, if this all works, as it's intended to work, Americans will pay what Europeans are paying, or whatever is being paid by people in other countries for these drugs.
Right. Well, and
Which
so this Pfizer deal specifically is saying that they're going to get drug prices to drop 50 to 85%. That's significant.
that
You
is
know,
significant.
we have 75% of doctors have said that they have had patients who have stopped treatment courses because they couldn't afford the medication. 75% of doctors know at least one patient who has foregone a medical treatment because they couldn't afford it. That's too high.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it
too high
is.
in America.
Yeah.
And especially when what it comes down to is the cost of the medication, that shouldn't be the limited access point for medical treatment.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, no,
that's my
agree
piece.
completely. And so Trump RX, the site, it'll be
I know how epic.
it'll be interesting to see how it works. And if it works. I hope it does. It's a seems like a good idea. Um,
I imagine it's like ordering medicine online, like from Canada.
I,
You know how we
I've
used to
never
do
done
that?
that, but I've heard
I've never
about
done
how
it
that,
either. No.
yeah, I've heard about how that works, and it kind of sounds like it could be that way, right?
But it's like the same idea, right? It's like
Yeah.
getting what they would get it for.
Yeah.
I'm in for it. So,
No.
okay, so that's how, but so moving forward, like the final point on this. Moving
Yeah.
forward, how do you think that Trump approaches balancing the Maha line with the MAGA line? Because there are places where it intersects and there are places where it diverges. And I'm curious your take.
It's a good question. As you said, I think he gave RFK Jr. a pretty long leash, and it has it has resulted in some interesting, I would say even unexpected things, like the whole Tylenol autism link. I don't know what you think of that. I
Mm.
was surprised that Trump spoke as strongly as he did about it. He usually likes to hedge a little more than that, but he spoke strongly about it. And I think it gives a lot of it. I think that it's going to give Americans a lot to think about, but there's a lot of political risk involved in doing that, cultural risk too. And I mean, and, we're going to talk about the media, but I was not happy with how the media covered that. They immediately just say Trump's wrong. It's just they default to right to Trump's wrong. And that's That's disappointing because how many times has Trump actually turned out to have been right on a lot of things? I mean, you go back to early this year, Nicole, and the wildfires that happened in the LA area that were devastating, right? It wasn't so long before that Trump was actually talking about the forest management issues and whatnot, and he was dismissed by the media, and I remember seeing a lot of criticism. I will even say that I thought he was almost speaking about something he doesn't really know about, and then all of a sudden there you go, like within months. Now that fire was set intentionally by an arsonist, it seems, but still the conditions out there allowed that thing to explode into the devastation that it was. So there's a lot of things like that. Now, will something like that happen with Tylenol? I don't know, but I would like to see more curiosity from the media and how they cover it. Let's ask some questions. I mean, RFK Jr. has made a huge deal about how drug companies advertise so heavily with essentially the media companies, and so the media companies don't have a lot of incentive to really uh, put them under the microscope the way they might. So all this plays into it. I don't know. I'd like to see somebody take a hard look at that and find out what's going on, you know?
I agree. I agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the questions.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the fact Tylenol was sold off to a small private company in 2023 says all you need to know
It's
about
very strange,
the
isn't it? Yeah.
liability.
Yeah.
Listen, listen, that it was owned by Johnson and Johnson, the same company who had cancer-causing agents in baby powder
Baby powder,
and
yes.
let us all use it for decades. So again, my tinfoil hat fits pretty nicely, I will say, and that one isn't hard to make me believe. I was told in my own pregnancy not to take Tylenol.
Is that right? Your doctor told you that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I ended up at like 6 months pregnant. I ended up with a really high fever. I went to the hospital. They basically said, "Well, you didn't test positive for anything that needs to be treated. You just have a bad virus. Go cool towels. If you get above, I forget what fever temperature they told me, but if you get above X fever temperature, take baby aspirin or
Hmm.
like children's Tylenol, um, and
So
take
they
a
really
very low
they're
dose."
a low dose, yeah.
Yeah. So they already knew. Tylenol already knew. I think that, um, like you were saying, there were some media outlets that had like an article from like 2019 or something saying that there was like a correlation. And then in 2025, the same media outlet is putting out Trump
Yeah.
says Tylenol causes crazy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it just totally recharacterizes it, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. If actually, Nicole, if you go back to about 20 years, you can see that ABC News did some reporting on Tylenol and the effects that it has. And this is completely different from autism. It had nothing to do with autism, but they were at that point sounding the alarm on some of the effects it could have on your liver, on other internal organs, especially when taken in close proximity with alcohol use. So, like, let's say somebody goes out, gets really drunk, and then the next day they use Tylenol to relieve some of their pains. This, it could lead to liver failure. Studies were finding, and ABC News at that point was reporting on it, as you would expect,
No
aggressively reporting
problem.
on it.
Oh, back in the day when media actually like was media.
Yeah. Yeah, or to some degree at least, but I feel like something has happened in the last couple of decades. It's not like it's not like the drug companies weren't advertising on television or with media companies, but it has something to do with the consolidation, right, of the media, and now uh, so many of the television networks are actually owned by a larger company, and all of that it leads to something that I just feel like it's not being scrutinized the way you would might expect it to be scrutinized.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. So we're gonna pivot to Israel and Gaza. I think that this we kind of planned this prior to everything that's kind of occurred in the last few days with the ceasefire and the hostages being released. Um, and just the way that Trump is looking at this. So he negotiates something that hasn't been able to be completed yet. We've had two ceasefires prior, one in November of 2023 and one in March of this year. And neither of them were able to stay or were able to really get all of the hostages released. And so I feel like the live hostages were really Hamas's last point of leverage.
Yeah.
When we look at the 20-point plan and how this is being approached, it's very reasonable. It gives,
Yeah.
the people in Gaza a lot of free play and a lot of what their wishes are and a lot of respect. There's a lot of respect shown. Um, I think that like you get down to, I think it's like not until like point like 15 or something where it's like demilitarize Gaza.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to be the biggest point of contention. Um, they're
There's a reason it's 15th and not second or third,
right.
because they know if they can get 14 other things, there'll be some substantial progress and probably some amount of lasting peace. I don't expect it to be perfect. I don't know about you, but it's
I
not
think
going to be perfect. It's going to be a little bit messy. Recent history would suggest that for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think that it's also I was so cautious to be hopeful. There's been a lot of celebration, and I think that I am happy to celebrate post hostages actually being
A-
released. The celebration
Absolutely.
prior to that actually coming true, I was really nervous. And since the hostages have been released, that is enough for celebration as far as I'm
Dude,
concerned. But forward looking, they don't have their leverage anymore. They're conceding to some of these agreements, which means they don't have their weapons. They're going to have all of their strategic arms taken away. Any Humvees or anything like that is going to be taken away. Hamas retreats to, I don't know, Iran, Sudan, Egypt, Jordan, any of them.
elsewhere in the region, yeah.
Right. And the security forces, so one of the part of the agreement is that, so right now, Israel is at a 50% line. They're supposed to pull back in one phase to a 40% line, and then additionally to a 15% line. And once they're at the 15% line, security forces are going to kind of trade places so that Israel IDF is no longer occupying the Gaza Strip. Now, then I go do a little bit more research and I find out that the people agreeing to be the security forces are Egypt and Jordan,
Yeah.
who have had ties to Iran since like the early 1990s, the first time around with Hamas. And the fact that there are basically ISIS and Al Qaeda aligned groups in both of these places, and any military insurgency that's going to be a private security force is gonna be those guys. So
Yeah.
I just, when it comes to the Middle East, dude, if it weren't for some of these Gulf states that are really trying to push a modern economy and like modernizing in order to interact with the real world, I really think that the kind of the devaluation of oil as a major energy source is forcing them to kind of diversify, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big push for the reason why Qatar is in the game and Saudi's in the game and UAE is
Sure.
we've got some different we've got some different players in the picture here.
Yeah, and I think that's, first of all, to some degree, it's a gamble on Trump's part. Uh, he does that, you could probably point to numerous other deals he's made in his life or career that were sort of a gamble, and sometimes they don't always work, like think Atlantic City, right? That worked, I guess, for a little while, but ultimately no. Um, However, I do think some of his language that he used in the speech he gave, not just at in front of the Israeli parliament, but that he gave later at the signing, I thought was putting the onus on some of these regional stakeholders to see this through, right? And to enforce the peace and uphold the peace and contribute to it. It's not just going to be the U.S. Obviously, the U.S. is going to play a huge role in it. Israel's going to play a huge role in it. but it's got to be that those other players in the region. It's a volatile region. It always has been. Probably will continue to be for the foreseeable future. But Trump, I think this is kind of like where he sometimes will try to, maybe some people call it manifesting. He tries to like manifest it by saying it and then sort of putting it publicly out there that, hey, it's on all of you too, not just us, to make sure that this works. Will it work? I don't know. We'll see. I hope so, though. It's what he's done lately is more than anyone has done, more than anyone in the U.S. has done, probably since Bill Clinton, I would say, to get us to this point. And Clinton did a lot. And if you listen to, if you recall some of the stuff that he negotiated, you know, he was close, but ultimately didn't get it over the line. I guess you could say Trump got this one over the line. Uh, so we'll see if it sticks.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned Clinton because I think that kind of informed his response to the peace deal.
Yeah,
Is that I think that his presidency also had a lot going on in the Middle East, and I think that like when you understand, I mean, I guess every presidency has now that I think about it, but they he can understand the complications, right, and the cultural impacts. And so it was here I'll bring up Bill Clinton's response because he
yeah.
had a good response. I'll read it for us.
I thought it was good too.
Yeah, he said the horrors of the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel and the conflict they reignited have resulted in unbearable human loss. It has been hard to watch and nearly impossible to rationalize. I'm grateful that a ceasefire has taken hold, that the last 20 living hostages have been freed, and that desperately needed aid has begun to flow into Gaza. President Trump and his administration, Qatar, and other regional actors deserve great credit for keeping everyone engaged until the agreement was reached. Now, Israel and Hamas, with the support of the United States, the region, and the world, must try to turn this fragile moment into lasting peace that provides for the dignity and security of both Palestinians and Israelis. I believe that they can get there, but only if they do that together. And so I think that in that response, he really honors the moment.
Yes. And I think it's important that he actually, by name, gave Trump and his administration some credit there. Clinton, I think, he's a skillful politician, and that comes through in what you just read in his statement there. Always has been. I think it's um, that's sort of been lost in some of the recent years, especially with like the the virile anti-Trump sentiment on the left. But Clinton is really a centrist, and he's also, I think what's interesting about his presidency and Trump's time in office and their dealings with the Middle East, there was more diplomacy than actual war, right? If you look at George Bush, obviously was a war president in the Middle East, and Obama then picked up some of that, and there was still, you know, even though our military activities had decreased a lot under Obama, we were still, very, very active in Afghanistan and
Doing
Iraq,
it. There
right?
was bombs
Not to
happening.
mention Syria, and we got Osama bin Laden, which was great, and there was
Yep,
all sorts of military activity going on there. I think with Trump, it really really came back, and it was more diplomatic, which is interestingly what it was with Clinton.
right.
And I think Trump and Clinton are a lot more alike than a lot of people recognize.
I bet you at least 50% of MAGA could also be considered a Clinton Democrat.
Yes. Well, that would be me,
That would be
Nicole.
me also.
Yeah.
That would be me also.
Yeah.
I never saw myself voting Republican until 2016, and my husband is military and served with Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State, and that was about all he needed to know.
Yeah.
And with how strongly he felt against Hillary Clinton, that was kind of what led me to vote Trump in the first election. living in Connecticut. I was terrified. I can tell
You,
you.
oh, you're still in Connecticut at that point, yeah?
Yes, and I guarded that ballot like nobody's business. I was terrified.
Yeah, I bet.
But I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so that is kind of why I turned away from Hillary. But if you look back to Bill Clinton in the 90s, I mean, and I think that again, this just comes back to like really charismatic male, really um can have a conversation, can crack a joke, can look you in your eyes and you feel heard, you know?
Yeah.
There are people that talk about Trump, you know, and they only focus on how he is on the campaign trail when he's talking to a crowd of 20,000 people. All you got to do is watch Trump on one of these one-on-one podcasts. He's connecting with that person. He really cares about what they're saying. He's actually listening and responding. It's not some manufactured script with certain talking points. I mean, he does
Oh
the
yeah.
weave,
That's
he's got his thing, but I feel like Bill Clinton was very much that also. Like he would hit the talking points, but he was a real person, you know, he could connect with you.
yeah.
Um,
Trump
so
is interesting, and you can tell when he's on his script and hitting his talking points, and he almost changes his voice when he goes off and starts ad-libbing, so that you know he's acknowledging, yeah, I have to say these things.
that's
I've
where
got
his
a
team
speech in
like
front of me.
pauses the teleprompter. They're like, hold on, okay, he's off script. Pause it real quick. Okay,
Yeah.
there it goes. That's the cue. Hit it back
But
on.
you can almost see his body language and his tone change. And I think, I don't know, I've not talked to him, but I think that there's some intentionality with that because he's more really the guy who's not on the script, which is interesting to see. Clinton was good at that too. Clinton was great. Frankly, there's a great clip out there, Nicole. It's very short, but Clinton was giving a speech. I think it was when he was running in 92. I think so. It was a campaign speech. And he actually said something that which Trump now says, but something, I can't remember the exact quote, but he's like, and we can make America great again. And, that has become now in some corners, that is, that people get triggered by that, by hearing that, but it was Bill Clinton saying that back in 1992.
Yeah, I feel like what I've noticed in a lot of ways is that MAGA is trying to be turned into this like racist, bigoted um
Yeah.
group. And I just
Yeah.
that like I feel like that's so detached from the actual MAGA legacy.
Reality. Yeah.
And it's hard to swallow that one for me because I would self-define myself as MAGA, and I am so far from like the far right groiper kind of like disgusting people that have no heart. Like, hold on, that we're not talking about the same things. We're talking about the fact that I have an 8-year-old, and in 25 years, I want him to live in a world where he can be successful. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what sums it up. I want the world to be healthy. I want the food he's eating and feeding his family to be healthy. I don't want to be forced to have any unnecessary vaccines or medications put into my body. I want the economy to be strong. I want America to be prioritized. I want to have a strong military. I want to be respected amongst the world.
Yeah. You want this to be a safe and wealthy country for
Right.
you've just one child, is that it?
Yeah, I
Or you
just want.
just one, yeah, an 8-year-old, yeah.
Like basically, I'm like, bring back the 90s, man. Come on.
Yes. So many people look back on the 90s. There's an interesting story written recently about that and how that was sort of the last great decade.
For
Um,
sure. I mean, because what are we talking? We're talking pre-technology, like pre everybody having a computer in their hand all the time.
yes.
And we're talking like pre 9/11.
Pre 9/11, I think, is the big thing. Things really changed around 9/11.
Woo!
And yeah, and that that's a big thing. 9/11 changed America in some good ways, actually. Because I do think that the probably in the 5 years after 9/11, the nation was never more together than it had been. But prior to 9/11, the nation didn't have to be quite that together because we didn't face anything quite like 9/11, or at least people my age and younger hadn't. I know there were, things like the Vietnam War and then and stuff that the country grappled with. Um, but yes, the 90s were in one sense um very comfortable
Okay,
in a
so we're
lot of
gonna
ways.
skip around because we're talking about the 90s. So we got to talk about MTV real quick
Okay, let's
because
talk about it.
we'll lighten it up real quick because MTV done. I
Amazing.
mean, it's crazy because like MTV, like if I could get home fast enough off the bus, I could get TRL on for like 30 minutes before my mom.
Okay.
And I just remember this being like the light of my life as a kid. Now, I do admit that they did go down like a crazy path with all the reality TV, like 16 and pregnant, although that was still like, oh, like I mean,
So
there's something to it. However, it's still the end of an era.
it is the end of an era, and some might say that MTV actually died a long time ago, and
Yes.
this is just making it official. I would actually be one of those people to say that. But MTV was great. So I think I'm a little older than you, Nicole, but back in the day, I also grew up in a house without cable. So
Mm,
my MTV exposure happened at my friends' houses, and
which made it even cooler.
which was yeah even cooler. But literally, it was a time when there were not even that many VJs. VJs weren't like you're talking about TRL. I'm assuming during the Carson Daly era, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. He
so
was like
Carson Daly had
young.
become almost the face of MTV at that point.
Yep.
The face of it at the time when I was watching it was more Kurt Loder, and it was like MTV News, and he would just break in for a quick news break of like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then it was just videos, you know.
Video.
Uh,
By the
but
time I was watching TV, VH1 had taken over the video game and they would just always have videos running, and
right,
MTV had gone more into like programming. There were certain like time slots where they would run videos, but it wasn't what it had started as, you know?
yeah. So I have to tell you that I have I am somewhat at fault for some of MTV's programming that you were that you were
Mm.
laughing
Tell
at.
me more.
So you know, you mentioned at the top that I have a TV background way back before I was even a game show writer. I was working in production for various shows, and I worked on an MTV show. Probably don't remember it. I think it lasted one season and then was canceled.
Oh my God,
It
try
was,
me.
but it was called Trailer Fabulous. Do
Oh,
you remember it?
wow. Was this like a design show?
It was essentially like one of these home makeover shows for people who lived in a trailer.
I
Okay.
love this
This was
guy.
highbrow. This was highbrow television. Let me tell
Dude,
you.
and now they're doing like tiny home shit. You were like totally above before the curve on this.
Yes. So it only
Amazing.
lasted one season. It was a tough I think it was I don't know. The audience didn't seem that into it. 16 and pregnant and stuff like that went bonkers. Even this was on at the same time as MTV had a show called Boiling Points. Do you remember Boiling Points?
Oh, I don't
That was
remember
like a
Boiling
prank
Point.
show
I
that
okay, okay, okay. I do
it did a
remember
lot
Boiling
better. I had a
Point.
friend who worked on that, and he was employed on that for much longer than I lasted on Trailer
Hilarious.
Fabulous. But
Oh, because that would be the one where they would like hide in the bus and then like try and piss people off, right?
yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it was
That,
it, it was kind of funny, you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
hilarious, right?
yeah.
What a time. What a time.
But
Well,
yeah, it is sad to
MTV,
see
you provided
that
a lot of trash in the 90s and 2000s, and we appreciate you for
that was
that.
actually post the 90s too, I should say. That was it. That was just around 2003,
Oh,
2004.
oh, yeah, I was gonna say because like I feel like it was like 05, 06 when it got to like the peak of trash.
Yeah, and when I mean when like you said, there were no videos on MTV anymore, zero, and
Hero.
almost no music shows. I think
Right.
MTV Unplugged by that point maybe had been over, or maybe had moved to VH1 if they were even doing
Mm,
them.
it-
Um,
well,
but it was a big part of everybody's life, wasn't it? Even me, who grew up without cable, I remember watching all sorts of videos at my friends' houses, you know,
yeah.
all sorts. I
Like
mean,
the first time you saw a girl in a bathing suit and you're like, oh,
yeah, I remember watching. I mean,
wow.
those. Some of the White Snake videos. Who was
Hmm.
it? Who was it dancing on the roof, the hood of the car on Do you know the one I'm talking about? I
No,
don't
I
know.
don't.
I think it
Lost
was maybe Tawny McCain or something. I don't know. There's a model dancing on the hood of a car during a White Snake video, but then there was like Nirvana too. Smells Like Teen Spirit used to play like 4 or 5 times a day, probably.
Yup.
Yeah.
Well, I think that this feeds then into our like changing media landscape, right? Is that we went from watching music videos on TV and now we have the internet and we can pull up anything on YouTube at any time we want. I would also be curious to see what um the production investment towards music videos has done in the last 10, 15 years, as far as like how much was invested in it prior versus now. Like, how important are they really? Is there a real market that seeks them?
That's a great question. I know some of the bands that I listen to, which I listen to some bands that emerged in the 90s and are still around. They don't do much with music videos.
No,
And that suggests to me that there's not a lot of upside for the demographic that listens to them. But I think Taylor Swift does some videos, doesn't she?
I mean,
Um, I
she's
think
got
like
the money,
Sabrina,
honey.
yeah, Sabrina Carpenter. I feel like, and I know that because my daughter's a fan. I have a 10-year-old daughter. So I've seen some of that. I feel like they're doing them. So there must be
True.
some, and I know I like will come across a video on YouTube that has some ungodly number of views, like 150 million views or something. So
Fair.
there must be some long game aspect to throwing a video out there and just letting it soak up views from now until,
Well, it's probably related to the demographic. It's probably like, well, my main demographic is going to be on YouTube watching videos and they'll play my thing on repeat 10 times,
yes, yes,
versus a boomer band or something like that knows that we'll just keep doing radio, thanks. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you have to know who you're marketing to.
exactly.
Well, that's an interesting thing. So, as we look at how media kind of changed in the last election, and how we saw podcasts being used way more, and how we saw um, way more long form versus
Mm,
just mainstream media 15, 20-minute interviews. Um, I think that this is really going to play into the midterms. I think it's really going to play into the 2028 elections. And so I'm just interested, especially because I guess my main point of interest on this is the algorithms and the way that tech owns the algorithms that work on social media. And social media are the sites that are now giving us all of our information. And
yeah.
so, knowing what happened in COVID with the censorship and the throttling of certain voices, and knowing how easily an algorithm can be manipulated from the back end, it's really interesting to me to think about how that plays out in our media landscape, and how are people going to reach the people that aren't in their echo chamber? Because really the voters you need are the voters that are on the line, right? So you're not necessarily trying to reach people in the real echo chamber. Um, and B, if how do we ensure that the algorithms are not being manipulated? Because it's very easy to think about adding a few keywords to AI and saying throttle anything that says Democrat candidate or Republican candidate or whatever the situation may be,
Yeah.
exactly what happened in COVID, and then change the whole perception.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your second question first, I would just say assume that the algorithms will be manipulated. They
Fair,
always have been.
fair.
The social media companies are even somewhat upfront about them changing. They say changing their algorithms. I think Elon Musk buying Twitter, now X, was a huge thing because at least he's open sourcing it and letting everyone see the changes they're making to the algorithm. When Facebook used to make a change, they used to like put out a little statement saying, "Well, we made these changes and these are why we made the changes," but nobody could actually see the changes.
Yeah.
And we know that they were doing some things behind the scenes that had negative effects for certain people. To answer your first question, I think that it's going to be very hard for people to break out of the echo chambers. I think an interesting attempt that's been made recently is Gavin Newsom. You've probably seen him on Twitter if you spend any amount of time there, or X. I can't stop calling it Twitter.
Yeah, me neither.
He has he's been incessant, and he's clearly got, a staff doing it, just tweeting and trying to troll Trump and everything. I don't even think Trump has once responded to it, but I do think that is his attempt to break out of the echo chamber. I mean, Newsom, I think, reaches the people he needs to reach. Um, how do you get out of it? Maybe you trying to tangle with Trump. And I do think that it is probably working to some degree. He's probably getting eyeballs at least, but the way he's gone about it, and it's been a cringy look, I think, in the way he's done it. So so is it effective? I don't know. I don't know that it's buying him any voters, or getting any Trump voters to be like, well, maybe I should think about Gavin Newsom as a potential 2028 candidate to vote for, I don't know. I would say, based on my own feeling, I don't see that happen. I don't like I voted Trump in 24. I don't see myself voting for Gavin Newsom in 28 because of his.
What a swing that would be,
That,
huh?
that, that would be a huge swing, but it wouldn't be that much of a swing for me, because prior to 2016, I was almost voting exclusively Democrat, so
Well, but I mean, listen, this is how much the tides have changed. In 2016, I was a registered Democrat in Connecticut, and I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. Okay.
did
So,
you?
yes. And then I voted for Trump 3 times. And now
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is like the most socialist dude I've ever met in my life. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like from Bernie Bros to now, we've like pulled the biggest 180 I've ever seen in my life. And now he's like endorsing Mamdani for
Yeah.
New York mayor. And I'm like, brr, like I always knew you wanted free healthcare, bro, but free everything, like,
Yeah.
state-run grocery stores, like,
Yeah.
let's
I think Bernie seems to lack a moral center, I would say. I really think he's just trying to stay relevant. He did have a moment in 2016, clearly, and resonated with people, and for real reasons,
yeah.
But I don't think that he's been able to truly maintain it. And I just don't see him being.
Well, and I think that there's a difference of Bernie off of the tail of Obama
Yeah,
and trying to build momentum for build momentum on what Obama had started. I don't think that he was facing the same environment then as he is now politically,
true. Yes.
and
Trump hadn't fully, the Trump effect hadn't fully taken hold at that point.
yeah, and I
As
think
you're
that like
describing it, Trump really flipped a lot of things, right? You just talked about, you voted for Bernie in the primary, and then you voted for Trump 3 times. He made things go topsy-turvy in this country
yeah.
in a way that no one ever has.
Well, and I think that I think about this, and again, I think about the parallel in the New York mayoral race is that he he doesn't actually represent a lot of the traditional Republican beliefs. I mean, a couple, but he's really kind of loosey-goosey on a couple of the things that Republicans are usually like hard line,
Yeah.
And it he ended up running as a Republican because running as an independent would have ended it for him. Just
Yep.
can't work, won't work. And I look at like the mayoral race and like how Eric Adams was running as a dependent, Cuomo, was running as an independent, and I just think like it's so interesting that in order for Trump to win, he had to redefine a whole party, then
Yeah.
work with old school GOP and try and get all this stuff going when he is like breaking every mold out there and they're all like, huh, sir, like these things take 18 months and he's like, get it done in 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't know. But I think that this is the shakeup that we all wanted. We voted for the shakeup. We
So
wanted
many
the
Americans.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. And I just when it comes to the way that media is going to approach this, I don't think that there is a way out. Like I think that we've entered the era where everything's about a reaction, everything's about an outrage response, everything's about black or white perspective of something, not the gray. Outrage farming,
Yes.
baiting, engagement farming, right?
Yes.
And so I don't when we have a media structure that makes money on the outrage and the baiting and the engagement, we don't have a media structure that's incentivized to tell the truth. We have a media structure that's incentivized to create the engagement. And so there's no incentive for them to be truth tellers. There's no incentive for them to say the thing that is the real story if it doesn't follow the narrative. And so like when we go into a new election, I feel like people are going to have to be more character. We're going to have more full on Trumps. That's why Gavin Newsom's attempt to be Trumpian is working, right? It's because it's like we now require somebody to be so out there and big personality wise because it's what gets the engagement. That's what gets the following. That's what the base is.
It does, but it also Trump has always been a larger than life character. I think that some politicians make the mistake of trying to be Trump-like in their own way, and they really can't. He's an outlier. We're we're seeing him now, and people should, whether you like him or not, should appreciate what you're seeing because you're never going to see anything like him again. It's just not. And people have to do their own thing. I think Ron DeSantis is a really interesting example. I think he does not sell out he does not try to be like Trump. Now, it worked terribly for him, but that's because Trump was still around, right?
Right.
I think that if, let's say Trump, the legal things didn't work out the way they did, and he ended up being jailed and so forth, and he was not a viable candidate. I think things could have gone a lot differently for DeSantis. Um, and I don't even know. I think if Trump were jailed, the country might be in a civil war too. So
Oh yeah,
maybe
that
it
would have
wouldn't have
been
been
nuts.
DeSantis's time. But I do think that DeSantis's time is still down the road somewhere. He's relatively young,
Well, and
and
he's up for governor also
yeah, and
in
he's done.
2026.
Yeah.
I was in Connecticut and we got moved to Florida and it was in 2021, January 2021. So I came from a very locked down Connecticut into a very open Florida under
Wow. Yeah.
DeSantis.
Huge difference.
And mind you, all of the media is telling me in Connecticut, Florida people are crazy. They're still on the
Oh my
beaches. They
God.
don't care
Yeah.
about anything, right? They were
Unbelievable.
telling us like DeSantis
Yes.
was a whack job. And so I was really scared. I mean, we got down to Florida and I was like, nobody was masking in the stores. I was like, I felt like the
Yeah.
op went out with the mask on because I was still programmed. I was freaked out.
Same. Yeah.
And then I lived under DeSantis for 4.5 years. Well, yeah, basically. And it was the most freedom I've ever experienced in my life. He was the most effective, no BS governor. We never had, well, listen, we went through all those crazy hurricanes and everything like that.
Yeah.
Dude, everything was amazing. I honestly, I thought he was such an amazing governor. And I agree with you that he's still, there is once the whole Rubio Vance thing plays out and
Wow.
that's I'm scared of that. I'm scared to see those two go into a primary debate together, if I'm honest. Not like scared out of fear, but like, woo, the savage shit. I
It's
don't
going to
want
be a
them to
heavyweight
like,
fight. Yeah. It's a heavyweight fight.
I love them both. I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
It's like I look at that now and like Rubio is kicking butt.
Yep.
He is like taking names. I love the way he speaks. He's so great at it. And then JD Vance has already been positioned in this VP role and he's getting the training of like top dog. And I have already seen JD Vance change from campaign trail to now as far as I can tell the Trumpisms that are rubbing off on him, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I,
like the tweet the other day about to Elizabeth Warren,
yup.
the Indigenous People Day.
Yeah, that was a
I mean,
fun. He's
that
funny. I like
that was
JD.
funny.
I know that. Anyway,
And
that one's
I think that that is close just to what we were discussing there about people being like Trump. That was a little Trump-like. JD Vance 8 years ago never would have done something like that. I feel like he probably feels empowered with Trump as his president to do something like that. But
I,
he's also kind of taking notes from Trump. But to your point about Vance versus Rubio, and then even DeSantis, those guys are all young. They're all in their 40s. And if Republicans, I think about things and position themselves right with the way Democrats are behaving, the current Democrats are behaving these days, they could set themselves up for a generational hold on the White House. If they don't come, fall into too much infighting, and like you said, like that a debate with the two of those guys, even the three of those guys, assuming that DeSantis wants to get back in it, that's going to be a heavyweight, like Royal Rumble, actually, with the three of them. And hopefully they don't damage each other too much. I would,
well, that would be my big concern, right? Is
yeah,
that the hope is that they all come together at the end and they still work in the in the
yeah,
cabinet together in some capacity, right? I don't want to lose any of them as leaders. And so you don't want too much slander,
yeah.
beforehand, I guess, is would be my concern. I don't want to see any of those guys end up in the mud, you know?
Yeah, and it really, I guess, is going to come down to what their ambitions are. Like that, which one of them wants to be president and wants to be president next? Because there's
Right.
a very much I think a very valid case that Vance could run next. He's sort of the heir apparent as VP, and he could name Rubio as his running mate, and the two of
Right.
those they could have 8 years,
Sail into
and
the
then
sunset.
Rubio could build right on that.
Right.
And that sort of shuts out DeSantis, and I'm sure he's got his ambitions, political ambitions, but it'll be interesting no matter what happens. It will be interesting.
Yeah, but I could see DeSantis as a Secretary of Commerce or Transportation or something like that. I mean, he
Yeah.
can get in there. Listen,
No doubt.
I would be curious to know Rubio's animosity towards JD for JD being so much younger and so much less experienced, being put in the VP slot ahead of Rubio, and then riding JD's coattails as VP.
Yeah.
Like does that what I don't know Rubio's personality enough to know how much he's swayed by his ego, but it doesn't seem like that
Doesn't seem,
much.
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
But you can't help but think that by the time that comes around, we're talking about 10, 12 years of grinding it out for maybe a shot. I don't know. You can't help but think that in DC world, that is a hard lunch to eat.
No doubt. You're 100% right about that. I think too, what it'll come down to is internal polling, right? They will go out and poll and they're going to see. And if Rubio is seen, and right now he's, I think, probably more popular than he's ever been.
Yes,
Um, if that holds, and they're seeing that he's more popular than JD in some internal polling that they do,
true, true.
you could see him maybe making a run for it. And I do think Trump is gonna. I don't think Trump has, you know, blessed Vance yet with that. And that's just not his way.
Right.
Trump is the same way. He wants to see
Open options.
exactly. Trump wants to pick the winner, right? So he's gonna wait and he's gonna look at polling. He looks at
That's a
polling
good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
and look at all other indicators. One thing I wanted to just go back to, you talk about the media. I think well, we're talking about MTV going away. That is a Paramount decision. Paramount obviously is making huge waves in the media landscape, and I think the hiring of Barry Weiss is going to be very consequential on not only the midterms but the 2028 election. This is a huge shift in the media, and putting her in there, um, it'll be interesting to see what kind of success she has there. Already, you can see she's getting pushback with people not wanting to answer. Did you see this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
She sent an email, a memo saying, respond to me by next week with what you do how you spend your hours and what do you think we could do
She
better and
sent
what's,
the Elon Musk email. She
yeah, it
sent
was
the joke
basically the
email
Elon Musk
out.
email. And immediately the union fired back with, don't answer,
Yeah,
which is
right.
It's just crazy. Any new boss
Don't
does that.
justify your
It's
job.
it's not even that. It's not that, it's not that innovative or shocking. It's just a basic step that many, I'm sure CEOs do it and whatnot. But if she can have success, I think that that will have a ripple effect across the media, and you'll see coverage be probably a little bit more even as time goes on. I don't think it'll ever. I don't think it'll ever be 100% even, but I think she's in a position to make some real change in the media, which is in need of change.
Yeah.
I think as we know. So we'll see how that all works out. I think it could be big. I don't know if you read the Free Press too. Do you read the Free Press?
I here and there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's done great things with that. I mean, it's become very successful in a very short period of time. And I mean, I think that the difference is building something yourself
Yep.
and having it be your vision versus being applied to somebody else's thing and working with a bunch of people who feel nothing but contempt for your mission. I think that that is a really hard thing when you're being uh, brought in on a sinking ship, and then all the sailors are like, just let her sink, and you're like, no, bail, please. you know
Yeah. And some will.
yeah, right.
Some will. And she'll probably be fine with that.
Yeah, right. Well, the
Uh
trash takes itself out, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly right.
So how do you think this plays into cancel culture? Because it there's been a lot going on about things about even Kimmel, for instance, right? We'll bring this back around to mainstream.
Yeah.
A lot of people were, up in arms about cancel culture being applied to Jimmy Kimmel, yeah, after everything that happened with the response to Charlie Kirk and people being kind of like outed to their bosses and fired. And then Kimmel gets kind of like, I don't know, censored, taken off the air for a little bit because of things that he was saying. And
He got a timeout.
okay.
I mean, that's what happened, right?
Oh,
Like if
right, right. Oh, I thought you were telling me to time out. I'm
no,
like,
no,
what?
no. That's what he got. He got a time. It
Right.
amounted to a timeout, you know.
Well, and so it's like the a lot of what the left was saying at that time was like, oh, the right had all this to say about cancel culture and now they're doing the same thing. And I think that it's a fair enough point. I think that like back in the day, cancel culture was like you calling somebody out because they did something dumb and you're like, don't do that. That was dumb. And the person would be like, okay, I feel ashamed, like I won't do that anymore. And that was kind of like what got them back into the fold. Like this is very almost like religious.
Yes.
Like you're exiled until you go to the priest and you become clean again, and then you can come back then you come back to society,
I don't
right?
even think it's that charitable, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's zero sum. It's like they want if modern day cancel culture has turned into like not just an exile. You're gone, you're destroyed, you have no money. Now you're out living in one of those tent communities in LA doing fentanyl. Like that's what
Right.
they want. There's no zero forgiveness, no redemption, which is sad.
Well, and that's the thing now with everything being online, right? It's like there's no privacy. Whatever you think you're doing anonymously, it's not like everything will always and can always be traced back to you. There are
Hmm.
cameras everywhere. Like we live in a police state, you can admit it or not, but we are, like our phones listen to everything we say. Like one of the things that came out in one of those Facebook congressional hearings was that Facebook was watching people's facial expressions through the camera to certain ads so that if your eyes widen or you got dilated pupils because you were interested in something, it would track that and then it would give you more of that. That shit's
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So, sorry, that was my little tangent.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess my point is that there is access to everything that you say and do. And we have never lived in a society where that has been the case, right? And so now where we used to have I don't know, quiet conversations with people or jokes, jab, like this is the whole thing, like back in the way back in the day when Trump got caught in the tour bus, whatever, like, grabbed by
The
whatever.
Access Hollywood tape.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly. So like but prior to this era, people could say that stuff, and it was like between two people, or like it wasn't gonna be, globally exposed.
Hmm.
And we've gotten to the place where we don't have that freedom anymore. I'm not saying it's right or wrong to be saying or doing any of those things, just speaking merely to the fact that we require way more self-control and we have way less freedom to be outside the lines, right? And
Yeah.
then we have the moral police that come in and say, okay, but if you are outside of the lines just a little bit, your life is going to end. If we don't like what you're saying, even if it's not morally or ethically wrong, if we don't like it, we're going to debank you and we're going to cancel you completely and we're going to embarrass you on TV and do anything we can to just waste your time and waste your money and make you miserable, you know?
Yes. I mean, that is extreme, extreme cancel culture, right? Like that, absolutely laying waste to your livelihood is,
Well, you're trying to end somebody. You're
yeah,
not just trying to like shame them, right? Which
right,
is where I feel like the again, we're talking about the initial intention of shame or canceling somebody is to get them to change their behavior, apologize, and come back into the fold. We're not
right.
doing that anymore. We're
Yeah,
purely exiling people and ending them as an act of retribution. And in general, I don't agree with that. Like, I think this is one of those aspects of Trump that is hard for me because he plays the game of like the never apologize, don't look back, go hard on the point and do what you got to do. And there have been times I will say where he's come back and had to change his wording on something or something along those lines, but generally once they say something it's like very much like that's it. And I feel like that has the inability to accept fault or the inability to have personal responsibility and to be accepting of apologies as a culture, I think that we have to hold tight to that. I think we have to hold tight to still letting
yeah,
people back in the fold because we all err, we all make mistakes. That's part of
yes,
humanity. And the other part of humanity is being connected heals us. And so when we completely exile somebody for saying something bad or making a bad mistake, we sever them from community and connection, and then we lose the opportunity to grab that person back. And I'm not about ending lives. I'm not about
yeah,
intentionally causing suffering. And I think that if somebody is willing to stand up and be like, I was really wrong about that. You know how much it takes more courage to stand up and say I was wrong when you're under fire than anything else. And I am still one of those people in the world that honors that reaction and values that reaction and is willing to hear somebody out. Um, I think anything else beyond that is just purely vindictive. And I'm
yeah. You're 100% right about this. I feel like obviously cancel culture got way out of control, has gone way too far in many cases. A lot of it is in the political arena, but it even extends outside of that. I think just a recent example that struck me, and I'm glad that it went away. It went away almost as fast as it came up. I don't know if you recall this. About a month ago or so, there was a woman at a baseball game. They called her the Phillies Karen. There was a home run hit into, did
Oh
you see
yeah.
this? The video of this?
Yep.
Home run hit into the stands. A dad runs over. It was landed in the seat in front of this woman, but this guy got to it quicker, picked up the ball, goes and hands it to his son. She's right over there. Now, the reaction to that was incredibly strong. She was vilified. I mean, my Facebook feed, my wife and I were just like, this is all we're seeing in our Facebook feed, like just memes and whatnot. And it was funny to some degree, but then people were trying to get her fired. And it's like, okay, there needs to be a limit to this, right? It's funny to make fun of and laugh and whatnot. But this woman, as much as I disagree with her behavior in that moment, did not deserve any further consequence in her life.
Yeah, retribution. She got outed on national TV and then
Yeah.
like throttled on social media. Like
Right.
that's enough, guys.
That's
Don't you
enough, right?
think?
Maybe that's deserved. Maybe she's got to know the camera's on her, possibly when she's doing that. And so that's a possibility. But it was going too far, you know.
I mean, here's okay, so here's what I've decided is the dividing line of cancel culture where I feel like we have to be clear. is that are we canceling someone for moral reasons, or are we canceling someone because we don't want to hear what they're saying? And I think that we just need to be really clear about our intention going in, because one can cause the change in behavior that we want to see. I'm a behavioral coach, so I just always think about that. But the other can do nothing good, right?
Yeah.
It just it creates more conflict, because whenever you try and silence a voice, that voice knows it's trying to be silenced, right? And then you just
Yes.
trigger anger and constant back and forth, which I feel like is where we are. So surprise.
Yeah. No, that I think that's a great point. And if you're truly free speech, which I think it's another instance of the topsy-turviness of the Trump world, Republicans seem to be more pro free speech than Democrats these
But
days.
we're the
But if you
fascists.
truly are pro free speech, you've got to be able to deal with some speech you're not going to like sometimes. Now if the speech is also with some actions and whatnot, I get there's a spectrum here, but you got to be able to listen to some things you don't like and just let it go. And
Right.
I think and the Kimmel thing was not straight up cancel culture to me also though. Um, he basically, like I said, he got a timeout and had to leave his show for a couple days or whatever. But in that case, I thought his what he said was almost bad business from the Disney or ABC perspective. It was to me it was no different than Hillary Clinton in 2016 referring to Trump supporters as a basket full of deplorables. That is almost exactly what he said. He just impugned half the country, and that's just not good for business. You always go back to that Michael Jordan quote. Republicans buy sneakers too.
Right.
And I think that there was probably a business case for them to cancel him. And there probably will be. His contract's up at the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if, like Colbert, ABC just ends up letting him go, the way CBS did with Colbert. So that
Right.
it's not straight up cancel culture if he loses his job. It's not like, to your point, nobody's trying to debank him. Nobody's trying to say he can't go start his own podcast and still
Right.
have a voice and
He's
whatnot.
alive, so
Yeah,
there's that.
yes,
Charlie's not.
that's true. Yeah, well, yeah. And when you're talking about Charlie Kirk too, that is, that's an assassination, and that's the extremist form of cancel culture right there. You talk about debanking and people losing their jobs. That's extreme cancel culture. That is the extremist.
Right. Well,
Yes.
and that's why it was like, I think that's the main reason why it was so agitating, the comparisons between Kimmel being, you know, having the consequences of his actions basically, and Charlie Kirk. It's like we're talking about someone who has their life and someone who doesn't. That's a pretty clear-cut line as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so I just I so this we'll finish here. This young Republicans, um,
Yeah.
they today we have this story in Politico talking about these chats that are released saying bad stuff. It's not great. It's not great stuff.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. And I hope and will truly believe that it does not reflect the majority of Republicans. It doesn't reflect my views or anything that I would say. And there is no confirmed source. It's an unnamed source in the story, which don't love. I don't think that really lends to a lot of credibility. And I also think it's funny. It's on the heels of um, this AG race situation in Virginia,
In
where this
Virginia. Yeah.
Jay Jones guy is out here talking about they won't feel the pain until their own kids are dead. It's like, okay, well, clearly we all talk in a way that we shouldn't sometimes. I think that's what I'm taking away from this. And I think this goes back to that whole like the game has changed, y'all. We can't say or speak or do anything without the risk of it being seen or heard or publicized.
Yeah.
Like self-edit is basically my point here. And
So two things with the Jay Jones thing, okay? Like you said, you have to understand the times we're living in, right? The times where you could have said that, or even in a text message, maybe when there were flip phones and whatnot, it wasn't as easy to share a screenshot of something.
Screenshot.
Yeah. Those days are gone. And if you're not, if that's not influencing the way you communicate with people, that's a problem. And as a candidate, I would think that even if you're a Democrat, like, is that you really want somebody who's just not that smart in that way to be you're gonna vote that person into office? I don't think so. And it's the same thing with these Republicans. Now it's different because they're not running for anything, whereas Jones is running for a significant seat.
Right.
But these kids should know. I get kids, I don't know, they're in their mid 20s. It seems like mid 20s, maybe early 30s. They're
Right.
not kids, but these younger people should know at this point. They should know better than people my age how careful you have to be, right? And like some of the things they said were horrible. Let's be really
No.
clear, right? Terrible things. And the whole I love Hitler, even if that's a joke, they have to recognize that Hitler has become this like political football in recent years. And people are out there actually calling Donald Trump Hitler.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
you
think
have to
that's
know
half
that
the
saying something
problem.
like that is only going to fuel that. And you
I
have
know,
to,
but I feel like we've come to the point in society where when you say those things the way and throw them around the way they've been thrown around, you completely desensitize your
yes,
population to the truth of what those things mean. And so I feel like this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You've put yourself here by saying all these things, and now it's just a joke. Listen, Hitler's not a joke. What he did to the world is not a joke. And the fact that you have desensitized a population enough to start, denying the
yeah,
Holocaust on a more like public way and like doing all this crazy stuff, like shut up. The
yeah,
Holocaust was horrific. Millions of people died and were put in camps and treated as less than. That is not happening. That's
yeah.
not a current revelation, okay? So let it the frick go because now you've got people who are dropping Hitler here and there and talking about Nazis commonplace. We never used to have that kind of
I
dialogue.
know.
And the
Well,
more we look at them and the more that we talk about them, the more we just make them bigger and bigger and bigger in our society. What are we doing?
yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up. I wasn't thinking of it in that way necessarily, that because they've heard this so much, it's desensitized it. So to say I love Hitler as a joke, they're almost not thinking
No, it
about
has
what
no
that,
meaning. It's a
yeah,
total
it lacks
troll.
meaning. I was thinking that they should be more aware of the meaning because presumably if they're in politics they should see how that's been unfairly used against Trump, and they should say, well, if this were to ever get out, we would look this would just
Right.
the appearance of this would be terrible. So strategically it's a really poor decision. But it could be what you're saying too, that it doesn't even, they're not even considering it as a strategic decision because it's just such a
Jokes.
throwaway joke. Yeah.
Right. Well, because listen, when you call Trump for the last decade Hitler, I love Hitler. Listen, the other thing that I hate about that story is all of those text messages are not in the context of the full thread. Okay.
Yeah.
So that big screenshot that's going around social media that has all of the terrible things posted on it that was attached to the story, none of those are in context. Okay. So I'm not saying that that justifies anything, but like if the lead up to that I love Hitler text messages, oh, here they are calling Donald Trump Hitler again, and the guy's response is
Yeah.
I love
That,
Hitler, then okay, so that contextualizes a little bit, you know what
yeah.
I mean? And then the other one that I saw was like a girl that was talking about like I want to watch them burn.
Yeah.
Again, I think some context. I don't know what the context is, and if it's a terrible thing, then I don't justify it. But all I'm saying is like we have all at one point or another talked about an enemy or a foe or a competitor in a illustrative way that we didn't mean in reality, right? You know,
Yes.
I'm an athlete. I'm a lifelong athlete. I've always looked at competitors and been like, "Oh, they're going down."
Oh,
Or you know,
absolutely.
like
I would say probably in sporting events, people use really salty language, right?
right,
In the heat
right.
in the
Like
heat of the moment.
now, I never said I want somebody to go into a gas chamber, but I could have said, "Oh, I'm gonna burn you today." That
Yeah.
could have been, you know what I mean? So, like, again, context matters. And especially when we're talking about text messages, especially when we're talking about unnamed sources, especially when we don't have any real context for it. And it's coming out right after another text scandal of a lot of the
Yeah.
same shit. The Democrats, I don't know. There's my tinfoil hat for you.
Yeah, I actually don't. I mean, I don't want to downplay. I think that these people messed up and it's bad, right? But I
Yep.
don't think it doesn't involve anyone prominent so far that we know of, right? Right? These are
Yep.
young Republican staffers. It's gonna be bad for them,
Yep.
but so be it.
But we
Um,
also need to ensure that this isn't the culture that's supported moving forward.
yeah,
Because if this is used as a template to say, this is what the upcoming Republicans are, vote Democrat, so we're not, Nazi Germany, like they've set the stage for that to be, the
they've given them
tagline.
some ammunition. Yes,
Right.
I agree with that. I don't know if this is gonna have the legs in next year at this time to even be a factor in the midterms.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. The
I,
news cycle is like,
the news
oh,
cycle is
you
crazier than
missed
ever.
that? Too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. If it implicates other people, especially anyone who holds an office or anyone who's more significant, then maybe. But I don't see it. I don't see it being. It's a great. It's a from Politico's aspect. It's a great traffic driver right now. They're going to get a ton of page views on that, and somebody has a somebody's did their job.
Yep.
But I don't see it having too many legs.
Yep.
Could be
That's
wrong,
why
but
I've given the engagement farming has caused me to give credibility, like to reduce credibility by like 50% to most media.
I mean, there is some of that. But the media. So as somebody who's worked in the
Tell
media,
me.
I can tell you that it is in some ways it's not as bad as you think, and in some ways it is exactly as bad as you think, and maybe worse, I would say that if you like, let's take the New York Times, for example. I can be very hard on the New York Times, but I can also be like, I run a newsletter. I feature a lot of New York Times content in there all the time because they do a lot of great content too,
Yep.
in
Yep.
addition to being completely biased against Trump and the way they cover him and some other Republicans, right?
Yep.
Now, they have an enormous newsroom, and so their political coverage gets the lion's share of the attention, right? So a lot of people, when they think about the New York Times, they think, oh, just biased and anti-Trump. Yes, that's partly true, but two things can be true at the same time. They've also got like great culture stories, and like I featured a story in my newsletter the other day about people who own like 50 credit cards because they're able to take advantage of these cashback rewards, and they make a living off cashback rewards, which is why they own all these credit cards. I was like, this is wild. There's no woke agenda in this. There's no politics injected into it, which New York Times has done at times in
Yep.
non-political stories. This was just straight interesting story, and
Yep.
they're very capable and very good at doing those stories a lot of the time.
Yep.
The other thing is the media needs to make money, and they need to, so and the way they do that is getting page views so they can serve you an ad or serve you a pre-roll video. So they need those clicks, and you know that is part of it. I think largely like we need the media. Like if we had no media, we would be where would we be really?
Right. Yep.
Um,
Have a lot less to laugh at.
you'd have less to laugh at. You just have less. Like think about like a lot of a lot of these companies, like I said, have become conglomerates. So certain things, certain money that's revenue that comes in funds other things that you end up liking. Like Time Warner, like some of their revenues from any of their news programming, and I can't say this for sure, but some of it may go and then result in an entertainment show that you like that you see on HBO or something like that,
Right.
or may give them the flexibility at least to spend money in a way. So there is all of that. So I don't paint the media with a broad brush that they're wholly terrible. They're not. There are definitely some bad actors, and they need to. Some of it is very consequential topics that they're screwing up. and they need to be better. And I do think Barry Weiss is going to be influential in changing that. But
Yeah, I agree. I think that the way that I feel about media is the same way I feel about healthcare, where it's like the people shaking hands are all the same people, you know? And I think that that is my concern of it w when it comes to that. It's like we've put ourselves in positions like that where media makes money on our engagement and then, uses that money to develop entertainment and stuff like that. I think that when we look at media to be our channel for political conversation, that complicates the picture the same way that pharmaceutical companies paying for their own studies complicates the pharmaceutical picture. You know what I mean? Like that
yeah,
that is the dangerous point, I think, that we're gonna have to watch out for, especially because so much of this is going outside the purview of mainstream media and um and broadcasting and programming law and regulation and into this new media market. And so a lot of the same rules aren't applying. They're not regulated on their algorithms, and there is a lot less, there's more and less control at the same time. So that's what I'm looking out towards. This has been awesome. Thank you so
yeah.
much for sitting down with me. I would love to have you back. We've had great conversation today. Again, Andrew Tavani, he has our page one newsletter. So how can people find the newsletter?
That's a good question. You could try Googling it, or if you want, I guess the best way is probably just to go to like my Twitter profile, and there's a link that says check out my newsletter. You can click on that and subscribe. Like I said, 100% free. Shows up in your inbox once a day.
Boom.
Gives
What's
you
your
everything you
at?
need to know. I should say too, um it gives you links to content so you can read other stories elsewhere. So like, but it'll help you get around paywalls too. So if you like the Wall Street Journal but don't want to pay for a subscription, what I'm pretty good about doing is finding a link that doesn't have the paywall so you can read the story.
What
So
a hookup. What's your handle on X?
it's just my name, Andrew Tavani.
Boom. Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Hey, it was great. I appreciate you having me on, Nicole.
You're
Fun
welcome.
talking to you.